Okay, so this time I wanted to talk about the actual content and the type of stories that are in Nakayoshi. If you want to know more about the physical publications, I'll link my previous video on the subject in the description. Over the course of last year, about 26 manga series ran in Nakayoshi. Some of them began publication in 2019, some of them ended in 2019, and some of them are still ongoing. About 17 to 18 serialized manga are running in any given issue, and I wanted to note that no matter what issue you pick up, there's usually some type of new content for readers. In the sense of new serializations or new one-shots, there's almost always at least one manga you can catch from the beginning. And for manga dependent on continuity, there's a brief character and plot summary at the beginning of each chapter. This is meant to encourage readers to jump in at any point. So in my previous video, I talked about how Nakayoshi is known for magical girl manga, but that's not the only type of manga it has. I'd put Nakayoshi's serializations into 5 categories: magical girl, simple series aimed at younger audiences, spin-offs of popular manga, romance manga, and miscellaneous. So now I'm going to give you my thoughts on all the series I have in my collection. First up, we have Cardcaptor Sakura Clear Card. Easily the most popular series. It was on the cover 4 times last year and has a color cover page in almost every issue. Clear Card is a direct sequel to the original. Sakura has been aged up and is now in middle school, a common approach to these types of sequels. She's still capturing cards, but this time the cards are clear, as in see-through. All the characters from the original are back, and there's new characters as well. Most notably Akiho, a new transfer student to Sakura's class whom Sakura befriends. Akiho has some connection to what's going on with the new cards, and Sakura and pals are trying to solve the mystery while Sakura's magic gets more and more powerful. If you haven't read the original Cardcaptor Sakura manga or seen the original anime, I'd actually recommend the anime over the manga. There's a lot of significant differences between them. I actually made a video about it. I'll put the link in the description if you're interested. For the Clear Card arc, I'd recommend the manga over the anime though. The anime adaptation of this sequel leaves a lot to be desired. Cardcaptor Sakura Clear Card does have an official English version, and chapters are translated monthly. When I looked at Kodansha USA's website, I was surprised how many Nakayoshi titles were available in English, so I'll be noting which series have official English versions as we go along. Next up is Pretty Cure. Something significant about the Pre-Cure manga is that its publication coincides with the anime. Once the current generation's anime starts airing, that generation's manga will start as well, and once the anime finishes, so will the manga. The Pre-Cure manga is meant to be read alongside watching the anime, so all the action and plot is in the anime, while the manga focuses on little vignettes about the characters interacting with one another. By the second chapter of Twinkle Pre-Cure, all the cast has been assembled, and they're ready to just pal around with one another. At the end of every chapter, there's usually an advertisement for the accompanying anime, the most recent Pre-Cure movie, or other events and merch for either the current or previous generations. Okay, now we're going to move on into the titles that you probably haven't heard of. Brat Hunter Chu. Brats, as they are called, are these adorable little materializations of negative feelings. Our heroine Chu can see brats and joins an organization of brat hunters to keep them from causing chaos. Brat Hunter reminds me a lot of Sailor Moon, especially in its aesthetics. Chu is a twin-tailed henshin heroine with a magical brooch and wings. Her love interest and fellow brat hunter Gin wears a tuxedo when he transforms. Chu's weapon is a magical lipstick, a popular choice I'll be mentioning again in just a sec. It gives her the ability to blow heart-shaped bubbles that can trap people inside. I thought this manga was an interesting read. It's definitely super cute. The fourth and last magical girl manga from 2019 is Majo Kaito Lips, which does have an official English version. Okay, so the setup for this one is a little convoluted. Our heroine is Miku, who's into a boy idol group, but misses their concert so she can clean up her classroom. Thanks to this admirable act, her teacher reveals to her that she's actually a sexy witch, looking for a new recruit, and gives her a magical lipstick that lets Miku transform into the thief witch named Lips. So she goes to the concert, which is at a museum where a jewel is being infused with bad vibes, basically, and Lips goes to steal it and escapes via giant balloons. But there's a guy her age on the police force who is assigned to the jewel and gives chase. She kisses him, says he'll have to catch her if he wants to know her identity, and then in true shoujo manga fashion, he transfers into her class right after. Miku also meets another girl with the same lipstick as hers, who is also a witch, and the two end up becoming friends. This manga feels very similar to Saint Tail, and if you like thief magical girls, it might be worth a look. So I put all of these in the same category because they're all comedies, there's no difficult kanji in them, they all have pretty short chapters, and have a tendency to focus on seasonal themes like holidays. First is Wanko Robe. It's a manga that's been in Nakayoshi since 1976, and it isn't going anywhere. It's an ensemble cast 4-koma about Wanko Robe, a dog boy, his girlfriend Shime-chan, and their other pals. Most notably Rival-chan, who wants to steal Wanko Robe from Shime-chan. Despite Wanko Robe sort of being the unofficial mascot for Nakayoshi, due to it being the publication's longest-running series, I wasn't very charmed by it, and I wouldn't really recommend it, especially if you're above the age of 6. Moving on to Nekoiro Bokenshitsu. This is an absurdist manga. You never really know what it's going to throw at you next, and some chapters are funny and others are just plain weird. This is an episodic manga for those that like wacky antics and obviously cats. Wakamen, which is a portmanteau of wakame and ikemen. Ikemen basically means hot guy, and it is a vital term in the shoujo manga lexicon. This is a manga about talking seaweed that can turn into hot guys who help girls with their love life problems, all while telling you about the health benefits of eating seaweed. Yep, this is a thing. Next up in the vein of edible characters, we have Harapeko Penguin Cafe, where an adorable little penguin keeps producing sentient beings with his magic oven that are all combinations of animals and food. And Nakayoshi had a contest for readers to send in their own character ideas. This manga is character goods fodder done right, and Kodansha knows it because 4 of the freebies from 2019 were based on this, and I still have them all. Lastly, in this category, we have Tokyo Nora. Tokyo Nora is about a stray cat surviving in the streets of Tokyo. You know, Tokyo, that place that is supposed to host the Olympics. So every chapter of Tokyo Nora has a little countdown to the Olympics. Awkward. Anyway, Tokyo Nora is the best of these simpler manga from 2019. It has some heartfelt moments mixed in with the jokes, and it's really fun to see what this cat and its ragtag friends are up to in the big city. Hozuki no Retetsu Shiro no Ashiato is a spin-off of Hozuki no Retetsu, a manga that takes place in Buddhist hell. The spin-off focuses on the supporting characters from the main series, primarily Momotaro's dog Shiro, who is fluffy and adorable and has parted with Momotaro to work as a torturer of sinners in hell. The manga is in a 4-koma style, and usually the punchline has something to do with part of Buddhist mythology or Shiro just being hungry. I've noticed that Hozuki is perceived as a male-oriented franchise by many Americans, when it's actually very popular with women in Japan for a multitude of reasons. So it's not a far leap to assume younger girls might enjoy its spin-off about cute animals, and it's an interesting way to learn about mythology that's relevant to Japanese culture. The other manga of this nature is Bacteria at Work, a spin-off of Cells at Work, one of many. The Cells at Work franchise promotes itself as educational in Japan since it's about biology, but it feels more about consumerism. I don't know if that's just me. Thanks to Cells at Work's popularity, this does have an official English version. Okay, it's time to talk about the genre that makes up the grand majority of manga in Nakayoshi, romance. And honestly, a lot of these are really similar to one another. It's always a schoolgirl that has a crush on some guy that's usually older than her because they had some sort of memorable first meeting, and then some other guy shows up to cause conflict before she finally ends up with the first guy. Most of these manga weren't for me, but I want to make it clear that a romance story being cliché isn't a bad thing, and in the case of shoujo manga, it's often the whole point. It's more about finding what flavor of backdrop for this genre is the most appealing to you as a reader. So here we go. Kono koi kanaimasu ka? AKA, is this love come true? A lot of manga have official English titles printed right on the covers of the original Japanese version, but official translations often ignore these because sometimes they're a little wonky like this one, or they just want to come up with something they think sounds better or would be more marketable. This manga is overall pretty bland. It's about childhood best friends falling in love, and it's forgettable to be honest, so I'm just gonna move right along. Kurohyo to Jurokusai. So this is a manga by the popular mangaka Toriumi Pedoro, and it's about a girl named Taiga who finds this guy named Henri and takes him in as a pet. But she's already engaged to a different guy, and once she realizes her true feelings for Henri, she runs to the airport in her wedding gown to chase him to New York, where it looks just like Gossip Girl, and everyone in the background has light skin and European features, and where you can buy American delicacies like donuts with the American flag on them. And she gives him a pet collar to symbolize their relationship. The collar was actually a prank by their friends, but Henri puts it on Taiga instead. Collars and the such are a common theme in Nakayoshi's romance manga, by the way. This manga left a poor impression on me and just wasn't my cup of tea. It does have an official English version though. Chihiro-kun wa atashi chudoku. Chihiro is an aloof fashion designer, and after Michi finds him napping in a storage room at the school, he uses her as a muse. The two start building tension and pining for each other in due time. Again, this one was not my cup of tea. Secret Cinderella is about Akane, the illegitimate child of a famous actress whose identity must be kept secret, so she can't go into show business, and after literally falling into the lap of her love interest who is in show business, she of course goes into show business, because this is a weird yet predictable manga. Senpai, imakara kokurimasu. After getting turned down by her senpai, Koharu decides to just keep confessing to him until he accepts her. The premise isn't very interesting, and despite her senpai's initial hesitance, he grows close to Koharu pretty fast without fail. It's an okay read, plus it has an official English version. Ogigawatashio kiramenai. In this manga, our heroine ends up attending an elite school where the princely Hatsuyuki takes an interest in her. There's a lot of melodrama in this one, mostly in the form of dramatic conversations in the school's halls. My favorite part was actually Megane Senpai, a comic relief character that's straight-faced no matter the situation. Also, Hatsuyuki makes flower petals explode out of himself. Taichi Senpai wa zuru sugimasu. Our heroine, Moe, yes, that is her name, loves romance movies and starts crushing on Taichi, a guy that was nice to her in public one time, but Taichi's had previous relationships go poorly, so he's hesitant. For this one, it lives and dies by its starring couple, where I liked Moe, but not Taichi, so their dynamic ended up lukewarm for me. Seek-sama to Haram Day. Okay, I'm going to preface this one with Arabian Prince romance is its whole own genre in manga. This premise is not unique, but it's surprisingly popular in Japan. I didn't think this manga was particularly good, but it's definitely not boring. It's about Tsunagi, who is suddenly proposed to by an Arabian prince named Rui, who whisks her away to his fictitious Middle Eastern country so they can get married, but his brother, who's actually first in line for the throne, uses various kidnapping and assassin plots to keep the conflict going. During said kidnappings and whatnot, Tsunagi gets assaulted a lot by the other prince. They also go to New York, which happens a lot in shoujo manga apparently, and Rui chats up the American vice president while Tsunagi gets drunk off of the dessert table. Again, this manga is not boring, that's for sure. Sei-kun wa koi o wasurimashiteru. Sei is a boy whose family has yakuza ties and thus is avoided by the other kids, but after he saves Sora from a pedophile rapist, the two get to know each other and fall in love. Sei then has to move overseas, but years later transfers back into Sora's class. Even when Sora approaches Sei, he acts like their previous relationship never happened. Sei, unlike all the other aloof-type guys in Nakayoshi, seems to have a lot more going on under the surface, and this manga isn't necessarily about finding your first love, but instead rekindling an old love, which stands out in a positive way among some of Nakayoshi's other offerings. Vampire Danshi Ryo. Okay, if you thought Lips had a complicated setup, get ready for this. Mito is a homeless cross-dressing girl that makes a deal with an otaku vampire named Ruka, who doesn't like 3D girls and thinks Mito is a boy. The two start living together in a boys' school dorm, and the more Mito feels loved, the tastier her blood, and the flavor is gauged by a heart choker around her neck. Ruka has a vampire butler, but of course there's a second guy that shows up. His name is Ren, and his mother was killed by a vampire, and obviously doesn't think well of Ruka. So even though Mito is female, everybody thinks she's a boy, including the vampire that's trying to pamper and feed off of her. Even Kodansha describes this series as BL-esque on their website, and it's not a mistake that some of the chapters have the phrase bloody love with the B and the L in a large font on the cover. This series is pretty sexual, especially with all the neck biting. It has an official English version which is rated 16+ to give you an idea. But this was definitely one of the best romance manga of the lot. It kind of feels like a bunch of shoujo tropes were put in a shredder and the pieces were thrown on the floor to see what order they landed in, but that's just sort of what makes it interesting, and honestly what makes a lot of successful shoujo manga interesting when you think about it. Cholka Hanka. I didn't like Toriume Petaro's previous serialization, but this one is crazy. At least by Nakayoshi standards. Miyumi is a high schooler that's good at jumping and goes into the protection of a yakuza gang after she is the victim of a kidnapping attempt. There is so much kidnapping in Nakayoshi, honestly. And romantic tensions between her and the gang leader start building immediately. This whole manga is violence and sex appeal, and the site Manga Updates actually tags it as smut. It really feels like it's trying to see how much it can get away with, and personally, I like things that have that approach, pushing the envelope and really usurping your expectations. So this is definitely not for anyone looking for a cute or wholesome romance, but rather it's for those looking for some over-the-top action and extreme gap moe. Speaking of which, I want to mention a part of Nakayoshi that isn't a serialized manga per se, but a recurring interview section with various editors and mangaka from the publication. And moe is one of the main themes of this section. It's basically supposed to serve as an advice column to aspiring mangaka, but sometimes it comes off as an analysis of manga tropes, where it breaks down things like what a moe gap is and how tsunderes work. So if its readers didn't already know about this stuff, Nakayoshi actively fills them in. Okay, time for the last section, miscellaneous. Miracle Nikki is about a girl that goes to Mira Land where she can have chord battles, and it's all basically an advertisement for a game app of the same name. The focus here is definitely on fashion, and there is supposedly an official English version of this manga from the company that makes the game, but I couldn't actually find much about it. Himitsu no Chai Haro. Okay, so Hello Work is a real-life Japanese part-time job listing magazine and job search site that people use to find work. As the title indicates, this manga is about a secret version of Hello Work. One that's for jobs of a more clandestine nature and specifically recruits elementary schoolers. Our heroine Ai has an ill mother, a common trait of shoujo protagonists, and so she needs cash for medical bills. This is actually a pretty cool action manga for young girls. Nothing is what it seems in this story, and as ridiculous as it is to watch elementary schoolers do things like take on yakuza and get into car chases, you can't really deny how fun and twisty the plot is. It's a breath of fresh air after you've downed too many chapters about crushing on a random senpai, basically. Last but not least, Yuzu no Dobutsu Karate. So this is actually a sequel. In the first manga, an elementary school girl named Yuzu has an ill mother and goes to live with her uncle who works at a pet hospital where she helps out. In this sequel, Yuzu is now in middle school and her mother is ill again, so she goes to live with her uncle again and helps at the pet hospital again. This manga is all about adorable animals, but it's also about how it's a lot of hard work to take care of them. Obviously, for these animals to even be at the hospital in the first place, something had to have happened to them. It even touches on subjects like pets passing away. There's a weird contrast between looking at the adorable illustrations while the characters discuss things like cat herpes. The sequel doesn't currently have an official English version, but the original does. So there you have it, a snapshot of shoujo manga from a year's worth of Nakayoshi. I do want to mention that Nakayoshi is actually available digitally. I specifically found it on Japanese Renta, which is a digital manga site. It's all in Japanese, but it does accept non-Japanese credit cards. But if you want the English versions of any Nakayoshi titles, you should look for them on Kodansha USA's site. So finally, I want to address that if you can get this stuff online, why the heck would you bother with the physical version? And that brings us to the freebies. As mentioned in my other video, if you get a physical copy, you get a little freebie, and I still have most of mine, and I wanted to show them off here. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions. I really didn't want this video to be too long. I tried to make it as short as possible, so let me know if you liked it or if you didn't like it. But I hope you enjoyed taking a look at this collection with me.